If you are preparing for Pakistan's civil services examinations, or if you wish to prepare for it in future after your studies, or if you have already failed 1 or 2 attempts and struggling for another, then you need to watch this. Since you already know what CSS examinations are, I would not go into the trouble of describing it. And I'll move straight to what is wrong with CSS examinations in Pakistan. The first thing that is wrong is the motivation for joining the civil service. According to my general observation, people wish to join the civil services for the power, prestige, and job security, and for some people, the corruption opportunities it offers. Also, you'll agree with me when I say that many students take this exam because of family or peer pressure. However, when people join it, they get nothing. Their power and prestige is limited to their ministries and departments. Their job security is compromised when they fail to please some superior officer or politician and are appointed as an officer on special duty. And their corruption opportunities, whenever availed, keep them awake at night and make them timid. Therefore, even if people join the civil services, they may not actually enjoy their work. And as a result, they do not excel in it. Second, it's a relic of former glory. The Indian Civil Service, ICS, was established by the British Raj in the 19th century, and it served as the steel frame of the empire. At that time, civil servants enjoyed enormously privileged lives. They received handsome salaries, perks, and post-retirement benefits, which is why it was a career widely sought after. It was also said that an ICS marriage was worth 300 a year, alive or dead. They were among the most well-read and educated people in society, as they attended UK's leading educational institutions, where they learnt about India, its history, society, revenue, and criminal laws. But after the partition of 1947, due to various political, governance, and legislative reasons, its standards started to decline. Therefore, parents and elders who want their kids to join the civil services need to read its history before making such an important decision. They should understand that it is a relic of the past. Third, the cumbersome preparation process. It is too damn stressful. Consider the family pressure. All hopes are pinned on candidates. Every member of the family thinks you will become an officer and drag them out of poverty, economic uncertainty, and social misery. They also hope that you will protect them against all the corrupt institutions of the government, especially the police, in a country where rule of law is weak. And while preparing, they idealize government officers, listen to their interviews, and build expectations. They also isolate themselves, and they believe that cutting off contact with their friends would enhance their academic performance. But the fact is that it does not. It merely adds to more stress. Next, the baffling checking process. There are many issues with the checking process. First, if a student fails in one subject, especially the essay, their entire performance is thrown into the gutter. A colleague of mine scored enough to secure the top position in Pakistan. But since he failed the essay, his entire effort was wasted. Second, it is a common occurrence that the examiners hit a subject, which means that they particularly target a subject to fail the candidates. Thirdly, it is also believed that the examiners cannot check such huge number of papers, and they seek help either from their students or colleagues in this regard. Isn't it baffling? Next, undue reliance on English essay. Why is English essay such a huge matter for this exam? I admit the fact that in this day and age, a good command on the writing, grammar, and comprehension of English language is essential. However, it is not smart to reject a candidate's performance in all other subjects just because of one subject, the checking process of which is beyond understanding. And the basic question is, does the bureaucracy need people who make policies, implement policies, ensure accountability, and get things done? Or does it need people who can write a good English essay? Next, language imperialism. Before explaining this point, let me clarify something. It is very important to know, write, and read English language, since it is the official language of Pakistan. It is the language of ministries, courts, parliament, and even the military. It is also the language required to interact with the international community. Having said that, it is plain language imperialism to fail almost 95% candidates in English subjects. Instead of doing that, English language subjects should just be qualifying in nature, and more emphasis should be placed on arguments, facts, knowledge, and analytical skills of candidates. The next thing that is wrong with CSS examinations is that the most able fail. Evidence tells us that competent candidates often fail to qualify the exam. Here is an example taken from a newspaper column by Dr. Undue. He writes that a student went into the CSS examination with a 94th percentile ranking in the SAT writing test, an A+ in a BA writing and communication course, and 85th percentile ranking in the GRE essay test, and the 100th percentile ranking in TOEFL. In the CSS English essay, he was awarded 12 marks out of 100 and failed. In contrast, he found that the number of students who found writing a coherent paragraph difficult cleared the essay. Consider another example presented by another writer. In 2020, there were 332 graduates from UK's 64 universities who sat in the examination. Out of them, only 14 could pass. Of the 29 graduates from the world-renowned Cambridge University, only one could pass. What does this tell us about the evaluation process? Next, to be where not to be. So, out of around 300 candidates who qualify the entire exam and reach the allocation stage, only 20 or 30 get a job in the group that they desired. What about the rest? The rest are appointed in services in which they had originally no interest in when they started preparing for the exam. It is quite possible that a candidate who wanted to become a police officer is appointed in Commerce and Trade Group. I know many people who studied subjects like international relations and defense and strategic studies in their universities and were appointed in the revenue department. Would such a candidate be good in their work? To study what not to study. Why should a candidate who eventually lands in the Commerce and Trade Group study subjects such as sociology or political science? Should not they have a separate curriculum for their separate exam in which they should study subjects that actually align with this occupation? Subjects such as economics, business law, statistics, finance, management, organizational behavior, or supply chain management. Next, obsolete selection system. Pakistan selects its top bureaucracy through a unified system of recruitment. Most of the modern world has moved away from their system to more advanced systems based on the evaluation of one's aptitude and competence for a particular service. Next, the academies. I admit that they are helpful. And in a free market, everyone has a right to offer services which they can for people who want to avail those services. However, there are some problems with academies. First, candidates spend hundreds of thousands of rupees to enroll in academies to prepare for this exam. Some succeed, many do not. Second, academies provide ready-made notes and reading material to their students, which dissuades them to actually think on their own through extensive reading. Third, they glorify the civil services for marketing purposes, which is a smart business strategy, good for them, but the ultimate losers are candidates who fail the exam. Fourth, academies often claim credit for the success of a mere fraction of candidates who may have utilized their services during their preparation. Many candidates seek guidance from multiple academies for preparation, interviews, and mock examinations. When the results are announced, these academies quickly take credit for a few qualified candidates who studied with them, but they overlook the huge number of candidates who did not succeed despite studying with them. Next, the erosion of academia. Students read not to enhance their analytical or literary capabilities, but to become glorified CSS officers. Students enrolled in universities spend their most impactful years studying CSS reference books and recommended readings so that they can pass the exam. They start quite a few years before they actually have to appear in it. All this has deprived our country of good researchers, scholars, educationists, entrepreneurs, and scientists. It's a poor investment. The average time spent in preparing for this exam is 6 months. If you count those candidates who appear 2 or 3 times, the preparation span reaches 2 or 3 years. Not only this, the candidates spend a considerable amount of money too. They enroll in academies and they take mock examinations. Those who move to other cities to study pay for rent, food, and transportation. Now, only 2% of those who appear qualify the exam. The rest get nothing at the end of their journey except stress, a broken ego, social anxiety, and a tag of failure. So here are some questions to ponder upon. First, Pakistan Civil Services is known as the creme de la creme of the country. But is this bowl of cream taking us anywhere? Second, is the selection process transparent, fair, and objective? Third, is this exam attracting the best candidates from society? People who would actually be good at the job that is required of a civil servant? Fourth, is the top bureaucracy actually satisfied with its job, or is it just there because it has nowhere else to go? Fifth, should not we encourage and incentivize our young generation to become scientists, entrepreneurs, and software experts and teachers, rather than pushing almost 30,000 people every year into the civil services exam? Do let me know what you think down below in the comments, and do not forget to share this episode with someone who may need it or find it knowledgeable.